Welcome back to Blender 101. So we are continuing along on our journey. So in this video, we're going to make the sword using the things that we've learned so far. And so you can see that we're sort of building up to a state where we're starting to make actual objects. This, you can imagine, could be used, for example, as like a low poly game asset. If you were building like a low poly PC or mobile game, something like that. And then later on, we're going to make a photorealistic sword as well. So we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But for now, we're going to use the skills that we've learned to start making some low poly assets that you could actually use. All right, so I have a brand new scene open up here. We're going to go ahead and delete this cube because we're actually going to start from a cylinder. And I'm going to go Shift A to add a cylinder, and in the context menu I'm just going to reduce the number of verts down to 6 because I want a 6-sided cylinder. So go ahead and reduce the number of verts down to 6 and hit OK. I'm going to push 1 to go into this front view here and shift middle mouse to sort of reposition. All right, so we're going to start with the pommel, sort of like the bulb on the bottom of the handle. So tab to go into edit mode, and then we're going to use Control R to add a loop cut in the center of this, and left click to confirm. And then you can either escape or right click to just leave it where it is because I want it to be sort of right in the middle. Now with that sort of middle row selected here, I'm going to hold down Alt and click it in case you've deselected it. If you Alt click, it'll select a whole edge loop. So we're going to do that, and then I'm just going to hit S to scale and scale it up sort of until it's roughly the shape that we want. All right, so now I'm going to select this whole top face here. You can do that as well by alt clicking this ring, or you can go into face select mode and just click on that face. I'm going to stay in vertex mode and just alt click to select this top face here. And then I'm going to hit E to extrude and extrude it about, sort of as long as I feel like the handle should be. Something like that is probably fine. And then just S to scale it up a little bit. And then let's hit Control R to add another loop cut in the center of the handle here. Right click to leave it where it is, and then S to scale it down a bit, and that'll give us sort of more of a sort of interesting handle profile. All right, so tab into edit mode. I'm going to alt click again this top ring here and E to extrude. And I'm just going to extrude this up a little bit and then E to extrude again, and this time a little bit more. And the reason is that this block here is what's going to become our guard. So I'm going to hit Alt Z to go into wireframe mode here, and then I'm going to select this whole top piece. So this top ring, and then this ring here. So this whole top piece. And then to make our guard, I'm just going to hit S to scale it up a little bit, like that, and then SX to scale it in the X-axis only. Something like that. Width maybe is okay, and then I'm just going to actually select this whole top here because it looks a little bit too tall, and GZ to drag it down. And then again, to give that sort of more of a little bit of a more interesting profile, I'm just going to select these two verts, these two on the corner, and the same thing on the other side. And to do that, I'm using the box select tool to just click and drag to select both of these, and then holding shift to do the same thing on the other side so that it keeps both selected. And then I'm going to GZ to bring those up a little bit like that. And something like that's probably okay. It doesn't have to be perfect. And Alt Z to come out of wireframe mode. And now I'm going to, again, tabbing into edit mode here, go into face select mode and select this top face here. And I'm just going to hit I to inset. So I, inset, something like that is probably okay. And then this is what's going to form the base of our blade for the sword. So I'm going to, you can see it's sort of got that profile already, but obviously it's too wide. So I'm going to hit SX to scale it down, and it should be sort of just a little bit wider a little bit wider than the handle. All right, good. So with that face selected here, I'm now going to hit E to extrude up in the Z axis till it's, I don't know, maybe yay long, and then E to extrude again, and then S to scale down like that. And you can sort of play around with this and figure out, sort of what size you want for your blade. I think this is too wide for me, so I'm going to go into vertex mode, and I'm actually going to Alt-click to select this ring at the bottom here, and maybe go into wireframe mode and Shift click drag to also select this whole top. So I have the whole blade selected, and I'm just going to hit SX to scale until this bottom is about as wide as the handle, or just barely larger. And then for this top here, I'm going to select this, so I no longer have the bottom selected, just this top piece, and again SX to sort of scale it down so that the blade gets a little bit sort of more narrow towards the top. And we can hit Tab to come out of edit mode, and Alt-Z to come out of wireframe. So that's the base for our sword. You can see it looks a little bit chunky. It's not quite the shape that I would like yet, so let's work on that. So down here at the bottom, I think the handle is a little bit too short, and also this thing here feels like it's just too close, and also it's not the right size. So let's grab it and just hit GZ to bring it down, and maybe scale it up a little bit. Something like that is probably a little bit better. Maybe up a little bit. There we go. And then this guard also, I think, is not quite right. So the top of the handle here, should go into the guard, right? So it shouldn't be quite this wide. So I'm actually gonna hitting 3 to go into side view, tab into edit mode, and with wireframe on. So that's Alt-Z. Select this pommel and this ring here, and also I'm gonna Alt-click to select, or Shift Alt-click to select this ring here. So I've got the whole handle selected. And I'm going to hit SY just to scale it down in the Y axis a bit. There we go. So it's not quite round, but it does sort of go into the handle a little bit more, or into the guard a little bit more neatly. And then on the guard, I want to also give that a little bit better shape. So tabbing into edit mode from this front view here, Alt-Z to go into wireframe. I'm going to select both ends here, and SX to just scale them until I feel like they're sort of in a good place, and then 3 to go into this side view, and SY to scale them in like that a little bit, and that should give us more of an interesting profile. All right, so I'm going to tab out of edit mode, and then just GZ to bring the whole object sort of up to the world origin here. And actually, now that I look at it, I feel like the blade itself is a little bit too short as well. So Alt-Z, and I'm just going to drag this top piece up a little bit more. There we go, something like that. Looks all right. Now for this top here at the point, you can see if I sort of zoom in just on this tip, it doesn't come to a sharp point. And if you wanted to, you could actually merge all of those. If I highlight this whole ring, for example, and hit M, it'll give up this menu for merging verts, and I can merge them at the center, and it'll merge all of them sort of into the center point of all of those verts. So let's do that. There we go. And now we have this sharp point at the end, and all of those are merged. And that's appropriate for something like this where we're doing flat shading. We haven't talked about shading yet, but we'll get there. And we don't really expect to ever be subdividing this mesh any further, so that's not going to be a problem. But one thing to be mindful is that in this case, it does create some triangles here at the top, which for other workflows you probably won't want. But for this example, that's fine. Now we're going to learn one more thing in this video, which is how to apply materials. And one thing that I see people who are new to 3D modeling asking, sort of on Reddit, on forums a lot, is how do I apply multiple materials to the same object? So we're gonna do that right away. And we're not going to learn too much about shading yet at this point, but we are going to learn how you can apply different material colors to different surfaces. So far, we've just been looking at modeling stuff. So if you look over here on this right panel, we've got the details panel, and these are where sort of all these options are for like camera settings and output and scene properties. Down here we've got one that looks sort of like a checkered pattern sphere, and if you hover over it, it says material properties. So that's where all of the materials will show up for your currently selected object. Now there is, if you look at the top of the screen here as well, we have all these tabs for different modes, and we've just been working in layout mode so far. If we click on shading though, there's this whole other interface for creating and adding materials to your objects, which we're going to be using later on. But for now, let's stick in layout mode and just go down here to the material properties. We're going to click on that to open this up. And you can see here at the top, it says cylinder. That's the name of our object because we created it from a cylinder. Let's actually rename that now. So you can double click up here in the outliner, and I'm going to call it sword. Now you can see here it shows the object name here is our sword, and it currently has no material slots. Now you can essentially have as many materials as you want on an object, and remember, if we sort of go back to when we talked about what objects are made of, we have sort of verts, and then we have edges, and then we have faces. Well, each face gets assigned to one of the material slots on your object, and that is how it knows sort of what to render on that surface. And currently we have nothing on here, but you can create slots and assign faces to them. So let's go ahead and do that. So here where it says new, that button is to add a new material, and up here on the top right, this plus and minus are to add slots. If you click new, it will automatically add a slot for that material. I want you to sort of understand what the difference is between slots and materials is though. So let's go ahead and click plus to add a new slot first. And you can see that we have now a new slot for a material applied on our object. By default, the first one that you add will apply to the whole surface. And currently we have no material in it. So we haven't created any materials to go into this slot, but our sword does have a material slot on it. And so if we were to create, a material and put it in this slot, it will appear on our entire surface. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's click new. It's going to create a new material and put it in this slot. There we go, and by default it gets a name, material.001, and it puts it in the slot. And here under this surface menu, you can see we have all of the properties of this material. Now let's go ahead and rename this material. We're going to call it, let's call it steel, and that's going to be for our blade. And down here you can see we've got a whole bunch of different properties. You can change metallic, roughness, we can change the base color and subsurface color. We're going to have a whole sort of video just on like all of these shading properties. But for now, let's just go ahead and change the base color to something that's a little bit more sort of steel colored. So I'm just going to click on this base color here and drag it from white down to like sort of a darker gray. And then I'm going to take here where it says metallic, because our steel should be a metal, I'm going to drag it up, and that should be good. Now you may notice that on our object nothing has really happened, and that is because we are not in a rendered viewport mode. So we are currently only looking at the solid mesh, and we've been working in that mode, pretty much the entire time so far. That's the default mode that Blender starts in when you open it up, but now that we're starting to look at some of the shading properties, it's time to learn about some of these other modes. So up here in the top right hand corner, we have viewport shading modes, and there are 4 icons here from left to right. So we've been working in solid view mode, which is this one here where you sort of see all of your objects as solid. And if you hit Alt-Z in this mode, you get this sort of see-through-ish wireframe that we've been using from time to time. To the left of that, you have wireframe, which is an actual wireframe, not just that sort of semi-transparent one that we get in solid view mode. And if you hit Alt-Z again here, it will also give you a solid wireframe. So you can see Alt-Z in wireframe mode goes from this to this. But then in order to look at our materials, we want to use these two on the right. So the viewport shading mode here, that's second from the right. This one is the material preview mode. This one is going to show you your material colors, but it's not going to do like the full photorealistic rendering. So let's go ahead and click that one and see what we see. And now you can see that our material appears on the object. We're going to stay in this material preview mode for now, and then we're gonna come back to rendered view mode in a later video. All right, so we have steel on our sword. We also want to add two other materials. We want to add maybe a brass or something for like the pommel and the handguard, and then for the handle itself, we should also add like something maybe like a leather or wood or something. So let's click this plus 2 more times. We're going to add 2 more slots, and then we're going to add a material in each slot. So I'm going to click on this second slot here and hit new. It's going to make a new material for us. Let's call this one brass. And then in this third slot that we created, let's hit new again. And let's call this one, I don't know, let's call it wood. That's fine. So with our brass material selected, let's change the base color to sort of a yellowish color and turn the metallic up to 1. So it's going to be a yellowish metal. And then for our wood, let's select the base color and just make it sort of like a brown color. So drag it here and maybe turn down the darkness so that it's a little bit sort of dark brown. There we go. And so now you can see that our object has 3 materials, but those materials are not displaying all over the object. And the reason is that currently, when we created our first material, it assigned all of the faces on the object to that first material slot. So everything currently just has the steel material on it. We want to go through and assign some of these other faces to these other material slots. So let's do that. So with the object selected, I'm going to hit tab to go into edit mode, and I'm staying in face select mode for now. Let's select and actually hit Alt Z so that we can sort of see through the object. It just makes it easier to select back faces. I'm going to click and drag to select the handle, and I want the handle to be made of that wood material. So on the right hand side here, let's click on that wood, and we're going to click this button that says assign. And what it's going to do is it's going to assign whatever is in this material slot to those faces here. So let's hit assign, and there we go. And now you can see that it's applied that wood material. Now, one thing I want to point out here too is that it's not the material that gets assigned to the faces, it's actually the slot. And so say, for example, here, right, I've assigned this wood material here to all of these faces, but let's say I wanted to replace that with something else. You can do that by changing the material that's in this slot. So currently have this third slot assigned to those faces, but here there's this little drop down menu here. It says browse material to be linked. And that's going to let you change what material is linked to that slot. So if I were to click this and select, for example, our brass material instead, it's going to switch out the material that's in that slot for whatever you picked, and that's automatically going to update the faces that were linked to that slot. Hopefully that makes sense. Anyways, I'm going to browse and just reselect that wood material because that's the one that I want on the handle. All right, so now let's go ahead and do the same thing for the handguard and the pommel. And so select the object, tab to go back into edit mode, Alt Z to go into wireframe, and then I'm going to just click and drag to select this whole pommel here at the bottom, and shift, click and drag to select these faces here, and you might have to shift click to select some of these additional faces. Here we go on this guard, and now we're going to click on this brass and hit the assign button. And there we go. That's it. That's the whole process. We're gonna expand on this, and in a later video we're gonna get more into the nitty-gritty details of how to make a photorealistic sword later on, but we'll get there. But for now, this is sort of your first low poly asset that you could actually use for something if you wanted to, and you can use the same process to make really sort of whatever you want. So that's it for now. I will see you in the next video.